Okay, welcome back. Episode 11 of Wavy Physics. And today I'm on my way to meet my friend TBTV, who's just started a new YouTube channel. He's just got his first superbike, and he wants to bring you guys into the experience of learning to pass your test, picking up a bike, learning some of the technicalities of it. But that made me consider something to do with vehicle dynamics. Obviously, bikes are quite different from cars. So they don't have the normal chassis modes like pitch, warp, heave and roll that we have. They do have heave and pitch, but instead of warp and roll, they have weave and wobble. But that's something I want to learn for myself personally a bit more, and I'll probably come back to in a future video. But in the subject of vehicle dynamics, I also wanted to talk about damping. So about 2 years ago maybe, in my RS4, I got a so about 2 years ago in my RS4, I got a Bilstein spring damper kit set up. Now I did this for two reasons. Audi have a system called DRC, which is proprietary to them, and when it works, it's actually a really good system in the fact that it links opposite corners, so front left, rear right, front right, rear left, to each other hydraulically. And in situations such as roll, where you would have, for example, a front left wheel going into compression and a rear right wheel going into rebound, it controls the flow of oil due to changing volumes. It controls via a valve the flow of oil between the corners, and that just basically adds to keep another dimension of control into the suspension system. But the problem with that is that it fails quite a lot, and when that happened I got a Bilstein set up, and in a lot of ways it's good, and in some ways I'm really not that happy with it. So when we're talking about damping, there's really two distinct ranges of damping. So there's low speed damping, which is concerned with body movement, heave, pitch, roll, etc., due to body accelerations, longitudinal and lateral, and that's really important for the transient phase in the corner. And then you have high speed damping, which reacts to more high frequency inputs. When we're talking about speed, we're not talking about vehicle speed, it's the speed of the damper shaft. So high frequency road disturbances, just bumps in the road, uneven track surfaces, curbs, etc. And the high speed damping on these Bilstein dampers is actually really quite good. It's not too hard, so it allows the suspension to be compliant over bumps. And the important thing is there that it minimises the variation in contact patch pressure. But the low speed damping allows entirely too much body movement. So basically that point from when you turn in until the car's settled into a steady state corner is too long, and you lose a bit of crispness in the handling and a bit of confidence in the body because there's a bit too much movement going on. And for Bilstein, quite a reputable manufacturer, I would have expected more, but it's something that I've put up with for a while. I had the car on track in Snetterton a few months ago, and it just, yeah, it's just not enjoyable, which is a shame because the stock DRC system was actually really good. But anyway, we're on the way to AP Motorsport, who is someone that I've worked with before. They've got a workshop, and I'm going to do an oil change. And my friend TBTV is going to do some work on his car. It's quite interesting actually. I can always tell when the oil needs a change. I've only done probably about 7,000 or 8,000 miles since the last change, but living in London, it's a lot of stop start, and you get quite a lot of contamination into the oil. So the engine just feels a bit rougher, particularly at higher revs. You get a bit more vibration. Like a country road, the car is like heaving and pitching and just generally doesn't feel very controlled, and it's a little bit disconcerting at times because you kind of get the feeling that the body's a little bit loose. I'm trying not to leave my friend on the bike behind. But yeah, the high-speed damping, like, they've done a really good job there because they've struck a good balance. But like, I turn into this corner and settling time, the transient time of the dynamics is just a little bit off. Like, it takes too long for the body to settle, so the turn-in loses a bit of crispness, and you just don't get the impression that the body's under very good control. And I'll show you what I mean by drawing a rough damper curve and a force velocity graph. And what I'm going to do next is plot the curve that I feel is something resembling what I have on my RS4 with the Bilstein dampers. And then after that, I'm going to plot what I feel the curve should look like, or should more closely resemble. Okay, so this is what's known as a digressive damper curve, and this is what most race or performance dampers are. And that basically means that you have initially the damper response, which is quite, the curve here is quite steep, which means the force the damper produces with increasing velocity rises very sharply. And then you get to a point where it starts to then tail off. The increase in damper force starts to slow down with increased velocity. And so, as I mentioned when I was driving before, the high-speed damping I feel is generally quite well judged, and I'm happy with how that feels. But the low-speed damping isn't so good. So you have this point on the damper curve which you call the transition speed, and that's basically where the damper valving transitions from low-speed damping to high-speed damping. Everything right of this transition is high-speed damping, everything left is low-speed damping. So my real complaint about the Bilstein dampers is this initial rise in damper force in the compression and rebound stroke isn't steep enough. So I'm going to draw what I think it should more closely resemble now. My best hand-drawn ability. And same for the rebound. Okay, so I'll label the new curve with these. Oops, I've just smudged it, great. So stock. So with race dampers, or pretty much any adjustable dampers, you can change the curve of the damping just with a few clicks of the adjustment dial. But because I don't have that, the only way I could get that done is a revalve. But another point that I mentioned that I was a little bit unhappy with is that the ratio between the compression and rebound damping isn't quite right either. So a damper histogram, if I had one available, would show me that the relative weighting of the compression and rebound dampers is off. So what basically happens there is that when you go over a really rough bit of road with like a very bumpy surface, uneven surface, what happens is, because there's not enough rebound damping, the spring is given too much energy for the damper to contain, and basically the body rides up, which is quite an unsettling feeling and definitely not something you want for performance. These are my thoughts after about 2 years of ownership of those dampers. Perhaps one day I'll get them revalved, but more than likely I'll just buy an adjustable set. We've just arrived at AP Motorsport, so let me get out. So this is the CSL. Done a few ring trips in this. And this is the Wild Megane. Yeah, last time I saw these, the wheels were black, it didn't have a wing, We had just put the splitter on, which is on their website, which I'll put in the description. The main thing with these is that the brakes get too hot, so I wanted to incorporate brake ducts in it. And then we want Aquapovic, keep going down, not that one. Aquapovic, keep down. Hold on, full exhaust. DB for the exhaust. This must be new. Oil in like a wine box. Strange. But alright. Having some interesting conversations at the moment about some projects I've potentially got coming up, so it'd be great if I can fill you guys in on that in the near future. As ever, welcome suggestions about content you might like. I had someone request some vehicle dynamic stuff, where what happens to the tyres with different weight distributions, like different engine positions and front wheel drive, rear wheel drive. So I might produce a video on that soon. But yeah, it's Friday, the weekend's about to start. Enjoy yourselves and I'll catch you next time.